I share these words with you. This is from the poem, This is the Honey, by Mahogany L. Brown. There is no room on this planet for anything less than a miracle. We gather here today to revel in the rebellion of a silent tongue. Every day we lean forward into the light of our brightest designs and cherish the sun. Praise our hands and throats, each incantation a jubilee of a people dreaming wildly, despite the dirt beneath the feet, or the wind pushing against our greatest efforts. Soil creates things. Art births change. This is the honey. And doesn't it taste like a promise? Where your heart is an accordion and our laughter is a soundtrack. Friend, dance to this good song. Look how it holds our names. Each bone of our flesh homes sings welcome. Oh, look at the gods dancing as the rain rains against a steely skyline, where grandparents sit on the porch and nod at the spectacle in awe of the perfection of their grandchildren's faces. Each small discovery unearthed in its own outpour. Tomorrow, our daughters will travel the world with each poem, and our sons will design cities against the backdrops of living museums. Yes, our children will spin chalk until each equation bursts a familial tree.
Lead us.
I invite you now to join me in an embodiment of prayer, meditation, whatever that is for you, whether it's a silent reflection, an ardent concern of the heart, or just a gentle moment of breathing. Let's be together. Spirit of life, we are gathered once again. Once again, a community of memory and a community of light. Somehow we've been drawn together to be here in this place at this time. Whether we imagine that to be by some great design or perhaps a particular twist of fate, or maybe just utterly random chance, however it happened, we are here now. We are the community present in this place and in this time. We are a singularity of this moment. What an interesting story we've stumbled into. The seemingly disparate threads of our individual selves are somehow woven together into something of a common tapestry. Perhaps what we hope is that we're able to make meaning of this unfolding tale, to see ourselves in the story, and to see ourselves not as extras or background players, but how about as the main characters? That's hard to do sometimes, Spirit. It can be so difficult to see, and sometimes it can be even more difficult to be seen. And yet, here we are, in all our glory, in all our insecurity, in all our joy, in all our pain. In some ways, we're all just trying to figure this out, Spirit. Where's the story going? What's going to happen next? Oh, Spirit, let it be, in the end, a love story. Through all the plot twists and all the major reveals and all the sudden reversals, dare we still hope that in the end, love might win? Can you imagine, Great Spirit, what might happen if we ever pause long enough to realize that we are more than just the story being told? We are the storytellers. And perhaps that means we really can, if we really want to, call out for change, call out for justice, call out for love. Blessed be, and may it be so. I have a reading to share with you today. This is from a book called The Truth About Stories, and it's been written by Thomas King. Thomas King is an award-winning novelist. He's a short story writer, a script writer, a photographer. He is the recipient of a Lifetime Achievement Award and was made a member of the Order of Canada. Until his retirement, he taught Native literature and history and creative writing. This is what he has to say. Stories are wondrous things, and they are dangerous. The Native novelist Leslie Silko, in her book Ceremony, tells how evil came into the world. It was witch people. Not whites or Indians or blacks or Asians or Hispanics, just witch people, not really people even. They came from all over the world way back when, and they all came together for a witches' conference in a cave, having a good time. It was a contest, actually, to see who could come up with the scariest thing. Some of them brewed up potions in pots, and some of them jumped in and out of animal skins, and some of them thought up charms and spells. Oh, it must have been fun to watch. Until finally there was only one witch left who hadn't done anything. And no one knew who this witch was, where they came from. All this witch had was a story. Unfortunately, the story this witch told was an awful thing, full of fear and slaughter, disease and blood, a story of murderous mischief. And when the telling was done, the other witches quickly agreed that this witch had won the prize. Okay, you win, they said, but what you said just now, it isn't so funny. So it doesn't sound so good. We're doing okay without it. We can get along without that kind of thing, so we'd like you to take it back. Call that story back. But of course, it was too late. For once a story is told, it cannot be called back. Once told, it is loose in the world. Beautiful as always. Good morning, everyone. I am Reverend Charles Loflin. It is a pleasure to be back with you again. I serve as Executive Director of UU Faith Action New Jersey, which you may know from its very early days as the UU Legislative Ministries of New Jersey. Grateful to this congregation for your long history of being part of the work of UU Faith Action New Jersey, where we're working to bring about real change in the state of New Jersey with a focus on legislative advocacy, as well as education and on mobilization. I cannot be here, standing here, without acknowledging some folks in this congregation who go above and beyond to help make the work happen. First off, a lot of you are subscribers to our emails, which is the most important thing in order for us to be able to communicate with you to let you know what's going on. If you're a subscriber, raise your hand. Just look around. You're in good company here. If your hand isn't up, I'd love to talk to you after the service about how we can get your email on that subscription list so you can find out more about what we're doing. But I also want to call out just a couple of people. Carol Escalzo is here, who is... She is our task task force co-chair for the Reproductive Justice Task Force. So you probably know quite well the reproductive justice she's doing here in this congregation. She's doing it statewide as well, helping all of our UU congregations. Thank you for your service, Carol, for all that you've done in that regard. And I also want to call out Anita, who has been a big part of UU Faith Action for so long, and Ira, who's in the room as well. Good to see Ira. So again, thank you for having me here. Have I got a story for you? That's a pretty good way to get someone's attention, don't you think? It pulls you right in, right to the edge of your seat. It's as if to say, hey, you need to pay attention because what you're about to hear is going to really matter. It's the hook, the invitation, the anticipatory tease. Have I got a story for you? You don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but you know it's something you need to listen to. And you know, we human beings, we're natural storytellers. Perhaps we're even inevitable storytellers. We can't help ourselves. We just love telling stories. We think in stories. We dream in stories. We remember in stories. They say that storytelling likely played a key role in our evolutionary survival. It provided an adaptive advantage because it fostered coordination of group behavior and facilitated cooperation. Our ability to tell and remember stories helped us to survive. We are, in many ways, hardwired for storytelling, to be both the tellers of the stories and the listeners of the stories. And that's great. But what if storytelling could be more than just a rhetorical tool? What if, imagine with me, what if storytelling literally had the power to change the world? Have I got a story for you? Thomas King, the reading that we read today, he's a Canadian-American writer. He's of Cherokee and Greek ancestry, and he's regarded as one of the most influential Indigenous writers and scholars of his generation. And as we heard in that story today, The Truth About Stories, that, by the way, has become one of my all-time favorite books. It was one of the very first books I was assigned to read when I went to seminary, and I keep going back to it over and over and over again. But a phrase he uses in that book that he repeats across multiple stories and multiple contexts is this. He says, the truth about stories is that's all we are. Did you hear that? The truth about stories is that's all we are. There is profound truth rooted there, and part of it's coming from his cultural expression that invites us to further reflection. It's a recognition that as a teller of stories, his words, Thomas King says his words, are really the words of many tongues and mouths and people who came before him. It's not that he is the originator of all the stories. He is a channel, a vessel of an ongoing storytelling. And aren't we all? Aren't we all? Those have come before. He is a listener and a reteller of those stories, sometimes in new patterns, sometimes in new ways. But that's what he's really doing. And fundamental in that acknowledgement is that in a very, very real sense, Thomas King is the product of the story that was told about him, and you and I are the products of the story that are being told about us. Powerful. What I think that means, if you dive deep enough, is that there's a direct connection between the stories we are told, the stories we tell, and who we actually are. Let me try to explain that a little bit further. Who do you understand yourself to be? Like who are you really? When you wipe away everything else, who are you? How do you know who you are? How do any of us know who we are? It's the essential question that we're all asking in our existence. Who are we? And how do we know it? It asks ourselves to consider how we know ourselves, how we are going to be defined. It touches on self-awareness, self-concept, the idea that there even is a self. And how do we describe that? How do I describe the truest me? How do I really describe myself? Well, I might answer that question differently depending on what context I'm having the conversation in. I mean, if I'm thinking about it in one context through the lens of psychology per se, then my answer might be very different if I'm thinking at the moment in a more philosophical vein, or perhaps some other discipline. In other words, the answers may vary. They're not one being true and others being false, but collectively they say something about who I am. Maybe it's accurate to say that we express the inherently complicated answer of the question of who we really are by our storytelling. It's the way we make sense of a complexity that can't be boiled down to a single sentence. We tell stories about who we really are and about who we really want to be. And it says something about what really motivates us, what really moves us. From that perspective, do we not make our truest selves known in the stories? Isn't that the most accurate reflection of our lives? And if any part of that is true, then it matters the story that we're telling ourselves. It deeply matters. So my question for you is, what story are you telling yourself? Boy, have I got a story for you. I know in my own life, that's sometimes really complicated. I mean really complicated. I don't know about you, but I struggle with a lot of negative self-talk. There's a critic in the back of my head that I cannot shut up. And it's telling me every day how I'm not doing enough, how I don't work hard enough, how I don't give enough, how I'm not worthy. That critic is there telling a story about me and who I really am, especially when there's a dissonance between the person I want to be and the person that I actually am. I imagine some of you know what I'm talking about there. But here's the thing. If Thomas King is right and the truth about stories is that stories are all we are, then the stories we choose to tell ourselves are not only a reflection of who we are, they're actually creating who we are going to be. That self-talk is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if we're going to get anywhere, we got to get beyond that, don't we? Our stories not only have the power to describe us, they literally have the power to make us. I don't know who might be here, either in this room or on this Zoom call, who might need to hear this today, but let's be really, really clear about this. There is a fundamental truth found in the Unitarian Universalist faith that we must never forget to lift up, and that is that you are worthy of love. Every single one of you. Just the way you are. You don't need to change to be worthy of love. You don't need to do anything different to be worthy of love. You are inherently worthy of love. That's the universalism in the Unitarian Universalist. You are worthy of love. And I don't care what some politician says, you are worthy of love. Hear that, beloveds. Hear that. Even if you sometimes can't see it, even if you sometimes can't believe it, even if it scares you to embrace, You are worthy of love. Boy, have I got a story for you. See, that's not all. Because it's interesting that the stories we tell about ourselves individually make us who we are. I mean, that's interesting, that's thought-provoking. But if it's true that we individually are the stories that we tell and the stories that are being told about us, then doesn't it stand to reason that collectively there is a relationship between the stories we tell about who we all are and who we actually are? See, it doesn't just matter about you personally. It matters about all of us, the we, the us. The stories we tell and are telling and are hearing matter. They are powerful. Words have the power to create. That, my friends, is why covenant and right relationship has to be central to a faith community. How we relate to each other makes all the difference in the world, because the stories we're telling to each other are creating us. If we're telling stories that don't lift up our best selves, then we will not find our best selves. The stories matter, my friends. They not only communicate who we say we are, but in a very real sense, they make possible who we could become. And storytelling has long been a tool of connection. It's a tool of healing. It's a tool of meaning making. It can be an antidote to despair. And oh my God, don't we need an antidote to despair right now? It could be a remedy that helps us navigate the really, really difficult moments. When faced with hardships, it's easy to feel isolated and overwhelmed, and despair can arise when we believe that our struggles are insurmountable. Individually and collectively, if we believe our circumstances are insurmountable, despair is on the horizon. Storytelling is more than a fanciful creative art. It is a means of transcending. Storytelling is an invitation not only to look at what is, but to imagine what could be, to think about the possibilities and to give it voice, to birth into the world an idea worth living into. When we tell the story of our shared journey, even in the face of difficulty, we can help make that a possibility. To get through what is coming, we need a story that promises our survival. Moreover, storytelling actually encourages divergent thinking. The process of generating multiple, often unconventional ideas. Good stories are full of twists and surprises and unexpected turns. This mirrors not only our individual creative problem-solving process, but the group process by which we make decisions, where solutions are often not linear, not immediately obvious. When we approach a problem as a story, we can give ourselves room to think out of the box, as they say, and maybe, just maybe, find a way where it feels like there is no way. Have I got a story for you? Now, some of you are skeptics. I know you are. And you're sitting there and you're listening and you're thinking, now, wait a minute, Rev. Are you really trying to say that all we got to do is believe in the positive story and it'll magically come into being? If I just believe it's true, it's going to happen. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's magical thinking, and that's kind of crazy. We all know there is a false narrative that's out there. Stories being told that demean and diminish and seek to erase. They are not inherently true, but they will create truth if we're not aware of their power. What I am talking about is a conscious choice that we have to shift the focus, to ask ourselves, what are the steps that could make a difference, that could make my life better, that can make this world better, and then begin to tell that story, not as a fantasy that isn't possible, but with real possibilities. If we can't tell it in a story, we can't get our brains to go along to take the necessary steps to make it happen. What is our story? How are we going to make that happen? And I'll be honest, it's a particularly challenging time to tell some of the stories we're trying to tell, isn't it? This current political climate, what the heck are we going to do about climate change? What the heck are we going to do about immigration justice and the people who are being threatened in this state, who are scared to send their children to school? What are we going to do about reproductive rights? What are we going to do about a culture that's going to tell us what we can and can't do with our own bodies? What are we going to do if there is no mercy? If we continue to have an environment that's based on dominion and overwhelming others, what are we going to do? What is the story we're telling? Why does this matter to me? Well, because in my job as UU Faith Action New Jersey, yes, I want to get you out there to do stuff. I want you contacting your legislatures. I want you showing up at rallies. I want you educating yourselves and others. But you know what I need you to do right now more than anything else? I need you to tell the story, to tell our story, our shared vision of a world that is possible. However you do that, I need you to tell that story because I need you to believe that story. I need you to lean into that story to make it a reality. Thomas King says stories are wondrous things and they are dangerous. Just like in The Witch's Tale, the story being told is an awful thing full of fear and slaughter, disease and blood, a story of murderous mischief, and we are crying out like those in the story, hey, wait a minute, too much. You've gone too far. The thing you just said, we could live without that. Take that story back. We don't need that. And of course, the truth is, you can't take the story back. Once it's loose in the world. But friends, hear me, we're not at the end yet. The conclusion has not been written. The story is still in process. And King does this great trick in his book. In almost all of his stories, he ends with some version of these words. I want you to hear these words this morning. Take this story, he says, it's yours. Do with it what you will. Tell it to your children. Cry over it, get angry. But don't say in the years to come that you would have lived your life differently if only you had heard the story. Because you've heard it now. Beloveds, have I got a story for you? And I have final words for you this morning, and I do hope that you will join us afterwards. I'd love to talk to you about some of the specific work we're doing in UU Faith Action New Jersey, so come have a cup of coffee and let's get to know each other a little bit better. Our benediction this morning are from Leah Ungiri, and this is entitled The Weavers of One Story. Here we are together, each facing our different human tasks, or maybe the same central one, to embrace the lessons life delivers, to discern and respond as we grow, to refuse harm and cherish flourishing. May we know ourselves as vessels of infinite possibility, holder of each other's heartaches and tales of joy alike, weavers of one story in which we all have a part. Go in peace, my friends.